Pictures at 13. The Coalition. Ireland, the war is won. Or shall we say in the United Kingdom, the war is won. The IRA in Belfast in the north generally, although involved in protecting the Catholic community from loyalists and state forces, undertook an arson campaign against factories and commercial premises. Typical British reprisals included the burning of houses and businesses, the owners of which occasionally had no connection to the IRA. In addition, after August 1920, the British began executing IRA prisoners. The IRA responded by killing British prisoners. Spies and suspected spies were shot by the IRA and publicly dumped on roadsides. Protestant England is finished. On the 22nd of December 2007, it was disclosed that Blair, who in '96 had been reprimanded by Cardinal Hume for receiving Holy Communion at Mass, despite not being a Catholic in contravene of canon law, had converted to the Catholic faith, and that it was a private matter. He had informed Pope Benedict 23rd of June 2007 he wanted to become a Catholic. The Pope and his advisors criticised some of his political actions but followed up with a reportedly unprecedented red carpet welcome which included Cardinal Bishop of Westminster, Cormac Murray O'Connor, who would be responsible for Blair's Catholic instruction. Blair was sometimes perceived as paying insufficient attention both to the views of his own cabinet colleagues and to those of the House of Commons. His style was sometimes criticised as not that of a Prime Minister and head of government, which he was, but of a President and head of state, which he was not. This is what led to his questioning his behaviour. Blair was accused of excessive reliance on spin. He is the first British Prime Minister to have been formally questioned by police, though not under caution, while still in office. And also they tried to bring trial against him after office. He was not found guilty in any way. However, his actions, along with that of Bush, where they said that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and went into that country to fight the war there, has to have a moral question to it. London, Tony Blair, who often kept his religious views private while serving as Britain's Prime Minister, has converted to Catholicism, officials said Saturday. The former Prime Minister told the BBC this year he had avoided talking about his religious views while in office for about 10 years for fear of being labelled a nutter. Coalition of the Willing Fight Against the Axis of Evil. 2003 invasion of Iraq. Tony Blair's testimony before the Iraq inquiry. He is called one war criminal amongst many. That's 2011. Coalition of the Willing. There's one missing. The Australian third person to be willing. Of course, you've got Blair and Bush, and directly in touch with the Vatican in their activities. Another picture of Bush. War President Bush says he sees God in the eyes of the Pope. Remember where this nation come from and what it was built on. Revelation 13 verse 14. And deceiveth them. Who deceiveth them? It's talking about that lamb-like power, lamb-like beast, which speaks like a lamb, acts like a dragon, deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. Who was the beast? The beast was recognised by all the reformers to be the papacy or the Vatican, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. The deadly wound was healed. The lamb-like beast makes an image to the beast. representatives of Protestant nations honour the Pope. Incredible. Prediction. When Protestantism shall reach her hand across the gulf to grasp the hand of Roman power, when she shall reach across the abyss to grasp the power with spiritualism, then under the influence of this threefold union our country shall repudiate every principle of its constitution as a Protestant and Republican government, and shall make provision for the propagation of papal falsehoods and delusions. Then we shall know that the time has come for the marvellous working of Satan, and the end is near. Keep in mind those words. Pontifex Maximus, meaning bridge builder. The first meeting between the Pope and the Saudi makes an historic meeting. Pope Benedict applauded the contributions of Christians in Saudi Arabia, a country that holds a strict Islam faith, while other faiths, Bibles and crucifixes are banned, in the first meeting ever between the Pope and the reigning Saudi king. Time magazine told us that in 2003, George Bush Jr. extended the power of the CIA. It had been taken away from them because of the blunders that they made. Until about 5 years ago, it focused instead on gathering intelligence that it could be used by other parts of the government. Before that, traditional CIA officers often worked undercover as US diplomats, got most of their secrets from the embassy cocktail circuit or by bribing foreign officials. Most did not even have weapons training, and they looked down on the few COG commandos who remained out in the field as knuckle dusters, relics of a bygone era. Now the knuckle draggers are out, not just back. They are the new hard edge of the CIA at the forefront of the war on terrorism, and, says a US intelligence officer, they know which end the bullet comes out of. CIA had covered a third of Iraq before war had been declared on that country. They had already begun the war. The mark of allegiance, Revelation 13 verse 16. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. How would that be possible? There'd have to be intellectual and physical constraint caused by that lamb-like beast. Dei Domini, Pope John Paul II calls for a national Sunday law. This is back in 1989, so it's been on the agenda for some time. On May 31, 1998, Pope John Paul II issued an apostolic letter. In his letter, he made 3 calls. Roman Catholics to keep Sunday holy and come to Mass. He calls for secular governments throughout the world to enact Sunday laws forbidding all work on Sunday. These laws are to be binding on all citizens, since everyone, Catholic and non-Catholic, should rest on that day. He calls for secular governments to enforce these laws. It would be assumed that this would include the imposition of penalties, for how else could laws be enforced? It's a very good point, the last one. Mark of authority of the beast. Sunday is our mark of authority, the Church above the Bible, and this transference of Sabbath observance is proof of that fact. The Catholic Record, 1923. Of course, the Catholic Church claims that the change was her act. It could not have been otherwise, as none of those days could have been dreamed of doing anything in matters spiritual, ecclesiastical, and religious without her. This act is a mark of her ecclesiastical power and authority in religious matters. Cardinal Gibbons, 1895. Sunday. The Sunday movement is now making its way in darkness. It's telling us, the Bible tells us those things which are happening behind the scenes. The leaders are concealing the true issue, and many who unite in the movement do not themselves see whether the undercurrent is tending. It's professions are mild and apparently Christian, but when it shall speak, it will reveal the spirit of the dragon. God means that testing truth shall be brought to the front and become a subject of examination and discussion, even if it's through contempt placed on it. The minds of the people must be agitated. Every controversy, every reproach, every slander will be God's means of provoking inquiry and awakening minds that otherwise would slumber. Jesus is about to leave them. Jesus is about to die. So he was anxious to give instruction how they could be successful, his disciples, how they could be like him, how they could have power in their life like he had power in their life, how they could overcome. And he was concerned for his disciples, such as Peter, that Satan desired him, but he had prayed the Father that he should overcome. Here is the very keys here that is given here. Concerning the commandments is the power of God in the life to overcome. The vital keys are right here. John 14 verse 15, if you love me, keep my commandments. John 14:18, I will not leave you comfortless, I will come to you. Yet in a little while, and the world see me no more, but ye shall see me because I live, ye also shall live. In that day you shall know that I am in the Father, and ye in me, and I in you. Note here the words, he that hath my commandments and keepeth them, he it is that loves me, and he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father, and I will love him and will manifest myself to him. God in the life, manifesting himself, revealing himself, making known his word, making powerful the life. Judas said unto him, Lord, how is it that thou wilt manifest thyself to us and not to the world? Of course, this was not Judas Iscariot. Jesus answered and said unto him, If a man love me, he shall keep my words. My Father will love him, and we will come unto him and make our abode with him. John 15:10. If you keep my commandments, what are the commandments? We just spoke of it. One is the seventh day, to keep it holy. That is a specific command concerning the Creator, acknowledging the Creator, acknowledging the one who makes you, who reveals himself and can bring about that born again experience. If you keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. He gave us that perfect example. If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, ye shall ask whatever you will, and it shall be done unto you. This is Christ in the life, eternal life, through the Spirit of God, because one has decided, made that decision to be a commandment-keeping person. Have you not any way of proving that the Church has power to institute festivals of precept? Had she not such power, she could not have done that in which all modern religionists agree with her. She could not have substituted the observance of Sunday, the first day of the week, from the observance of Saturday, the seventh day, a change for which there is no scriptural authority. That's her own words. The issue is about the mark of authority. The Roman Catholic Church changed the observance of Sabbath to Sunday by right of divine, infallible authority given her by her founder Jesus Christ. What is the mark of her authority? It should be that she keeps the commandments of God that were given to her by God. But instead she says her mark of authority is that she changed the commandments of God. The Protestant claiming the Bible to be the only guide of faith has no warrant for observing Sunday. Most Christians assume that Sunday is the biblical approved day of worship. The Catholic Church protests that it transferred Christian worship from the biblical Sabbath Saturday to Sunday, and that to try to argue that the change was made in the Bible is both dishonest and a denial of Catholic authority. If Protestantism wants to base its teachings only on the Bible, it should worship on Saturday. The difference is quite clear for anybody who wants to know God and know who is against God. Turn to the commandments of God and read them for yourself. What is the third commandment? Third commandment is, remember that thou keep holy the Sabbath day. Which is the Sabbath day? Saturday is the Sabbath day. The third commandment, if we look at Exodus 20, is not remember to keep the Sabbath holy. It is actually, thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. So this has been changed. This is man's ideas here given. The Roman Church changed the commandments of God. It tells us clearly what is the Sabbath day. Saturday is the Sabbath day. Why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? We observe Sunday because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. Why did the Catholic Church substitute Sunday for Saturday? It did this because Christ rose from the dead on the Sunday and the Holy Ghost descended upon the apostles on a Sunday. It fails to tell us, though, that Sunday was placed instead of Saturday as a worship day because it was a popular pagan festival day. And until this point, the church, Christianity, was not accepted by the world and was persecuted. This made it popular. Constantine thought this would be a meeting point, but by doing this he changed the commandments of God. By what authority did the church substitute Sunday for Saturday? The church substituted Sunday for Saturday by the plenitude of that divine power which Jesus Christ bestowed upon her. What does the third commandment command? Well, we said it says not to take the Lord's name in vain, but this says it commands us to sanctify Sunday as the Lord's day. So that is just absolutely untrue. What does the third commandment forbid? It forbids the omission of prayer and divine worship, all unnecessary servile work, whatever hinders the keeping of the Lord's day holy. In Germany, the High Court reaffirmed a ban on Sunday shopping, ruling in favour of the Catholic and Lutheran churches. Germany's highest court have found that the city of Berlin's 10 shopping Sundays a year go against the constitutional protection of Sunday as a day of rest. Sunday laws have been enacted, many of them, but here and there across the world at different times. We look forward, though, to when America as a nation will institute Sunday in its own country, will enforce Sunday laws, and this will be enforced worldwide. And later on, we have countries of Europe, the EU, of which Germany is the power behind the EU. Once Protestant, brought back to Catholicism, will also enforce the papal power for a short time. This is at the very, very last moments of time of this world's history. Constantine would, by all lawful and peaceable means, melt together a purified heathenism and a moderate Christianity. His injunction that the day of the sun should be a general rest day was characteristic of his standpoint. So the Pope works to re-establish the authority and tradition of the Church until the point where such teaching may be legislated again, as it was in the Dark Ages. Though he slay me, yet shall I trust in him. Prediction, Revelation 13 verse 15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. In the last great conflict, in the controversy with Satan, those who are loyal to God will see every earthly support cut off, because they refuse to break his law in obedience to earthly powers. They will be forbidden to buy or sell. Satan says, for fear of wanting food and clothing, they will join with the world in transgressing God's law. The earth will be wholly under my dominion. If the earth is wholly under Satan's dominion, then he can say, I have a right to this world, to all the people of this world. There is no point for which Christ should really return. He has come. Lucifer has come, as he once come to Christ on the earth, pretending that he is the Saviour of the world, when he is the destroyer of the world. If you don't understand, the spirit of Antichrist is alive and well in this world, and is well paid for, you're asleep and dead to understanding what's going on out there. Spiritism is rife, but when Lucifer comes, he won't look like this, though this emulates the very spirit of Lucifer as the destroyer. Forcing the will. The will will be forced by prison, exile and slavery. As an example, Guantanamo Bay, where we have USA bypasses its laws and puts its prisoners on a foreign soil. So in the future, this example will be instituted in other places, perhaps like the prison that the CIA had built in Poland, and other places right across the world are made ready for this worldwide movement of both control and forcing the will. As we said, Guantanamo Bay is an example. As the defendants of truth refuse to honour the Sunday Sabbath, some of them will be thrust into prison, some will be exiled, some will be treated as slaves. So that where prediction is given here of the future, looking into the future of what will happen, to human wisdom all this seems impossible. But as the restraining power of God shall be withdrawn from men, and they shall be under the control of Satan, who hates the divine precepts, there will be a strange development. The heart can be very cruel when God's fear and love are removed. But many of all nations and all classes, high and low, rich and poor, black and white, will be cast into the most unjust and cruel bondage. The beloved of God pass weary days bound in chains, shut in by prison bars, sentenced to be slain. Some apparently left to die of starvation in dark and loathsome dungeons. No human ear is open to hear their moans. No human hand is ready to lend them help, except that God is with them, by their side, understanding where they are and knowing where they're at, and is ready to deliver them. We use terror for the war on anti-Americanism. In a relatively small number of US diplomatic cables released to date by WikiLeaks, the most disturbing revelations concerning the war on terror deal with the pressure that the Bush administration exerted on Germany in 2007 regarding the planned prosecution of 13 CIA agents involved in the rendition and torture of a German citizen seized as a result of mistaken identity and the pressure that the Obama administration exerted on the Spanish government in 2009 to derail a criminal investigation into the role played by 6 senior Bush administration lawyers in establishing the politics that govern the interrogation and torture of prisoners seized on the War on Terror. You may remember these astounding scenes, which was LA turned into a war zone where everything went crazy when a young black man was assaulted unjustly, and the whole city ripped apart. Here's the Koreans protecting their shop on the rooftops, and this scene of the LA riots is what will be seen into the future. Martial law is ready to be enacted. Mikhail Gorbachev, in union with the Pope, the leader of communism, giving his hand to the papacy, from which communism sprung, was a revolt against what Catholicism had caused, and so the power is given back. The Soviet Union loses its power and gives way to America and the Vatican. Vatican bankers tell G20 leaders to pray. 2011, the Vatican last month called for a new UN-like global economic body based on the ethics of solidarity, that which had happened in Poland, that would encourage growth in the developing world and rescue countries that find themselves in financial trouble. And of course, the Vatican has poverty right outside its front door, and it could rescue many people itself, having the finances of the world in its hands. So it calls for others. It doesn't want to lose a cent, and it wants to bring the power base to itself. President Weiss, you have talked in various ways this evening about progress towards a new world order. You observed that the last election in the United States was a gesture in that direction, reflecting on the Arab Spring that seemed to be a gesture in that direction. As you leave us this evening, I'm wondering if you might offer your sense of where we're headed towards the world global order. Are you optimistic that we can achieve that? And what can our students do about it? Gorbachev answers, I have been thinking long about this, and I have concluded that the protests that are now witnessed everywhere actually are a sign that under every difficult circumstance, the movement towards a new world order is emerging. We cannot leave things as before when we are seeing that these protests are moving to ever new countries, seeing that almost all countries are now witnessing such protests, that people want change. Being orchestrated, actually. It means that they are not happy with the kind of world order that exists now. It means that the nations are adapting to the challenges of the new world order. Let me give you an example. Have we moved towards a new world order in the way that this was done in Libya, when bombs and missiles were used against Libya as though Libya were a terrible enemy? I agree that Gaddafi overstayed his welcome, to put it mildly, for 30 years. That's not democracy. And there were clans ruling parts of the country. Under such a system, people have very little hope. They had to just silently accept it. And of course, this never can last forever. I believe that as we are addressing these challenges, these problems are raised by these protest movements, and these problems need to be addressed by political leaders, by scholars, by civil society. we will gradually find our way towards a new world order. Thank you and goodbye. At the moment, as we have spoken, there is a movement for worldwide controlled globalization by secret societies, by the church, and these movements are done by stealth and by dishonesty. They're not by a choice. That old book of the Bible has always been about choice, has always been about a free movement for justice, for peace, for truth. And more than this, as it says here, occasionally I'll run into someone who holds an unusually high view of certain translations of the Bible. If we understand the history of Protestantism, from where the scriptures come from, the war on words, on what version would be used, the version of Protestantism, those manuscripts that made up the Protestant Bible, or those scriptures that were corrupted by the church and taken and imbued by the Roman Church, then we will understand where our strength and power comes from if we understand history aright. Those ideas, though from a human perspective seem right, of Gorbachev, will fail. The ideas of communism, or the ideas of aggressive Protestantism waging war across the world in the name of freedom, or the ideas of a church that has changed times and laws, will ever fail. And so we have a growing movement across the world. Satan is using his engines from the bottomless pit. Apostate Christianity, the biggest movement. Communism, it's done its part. Socialism, as it melts its way into the New World Order, it will be part of it, but its domination, the dominating one, is apostate Christianity making its way for the Antichrist, and we have the power of the Muslims also in the war against humanity. And then we have worldwide movements that are looking for a new world order, a new type of peace, a new ideology. But if it is not from that old book of the scriptures, it is destined to fail. This is a good sign outside the White House. Live by the bomb, die by the bomb. That is what scripture says. Ban all nuclear weapons, or have a nice doomsday. That is good. So that we have the struggle of humanity. Now we're told that Blackwell, who was a private company working for the CIA, was behind the Occupy protests or involved in it. Remember that by working on every side, making all sides weak, there will be the triumph of those who have orchestrated this sort of behavior. Primarily, at this time, we're talking about the CIA and the Vatican. Persecution, an image to the beast. If Popery or its principles shall again be legislated into power, the fires of persecution will be rekindled against those who will not sacrifice conscience and the truth in deference to popular errors. This evil is on the point of realization. Who will dare to be a Daniel? Who will dare to be as his three friends who stood up against the king of the world at that time and would not bow themselves down to the image who at this time, while the papacy is making the bridge, is bridging the gap for its own power, will stand against it. Waterboarding, first used in the Inquisition, now again being used in the military. Military Commissions Act 2006, legal for the CIA to continue Operation Torture facilities in undisclosed foreign countries, and for the writ of habeas corpus to be suspended for individuals who are designated enemy combatants of the USA, taking us back to a Civil War era. March 2008, President Bush said Saturday he vetoed legislation that would ban the CIA from using harsh interrogation methods such as waterboarding to break suspended terrorists. CIA needs this kind of valuable tool to prevent attacks, Bush says. What it needs to do is act by truth. It needs to act on its founding constitution, is the reality. Dealing it out to its own citizens. The Waco siege began on February 28, 1993, and it ended violently 50 days later on April 19. Have a look at some of the clips, the footage from what happened in the investigation. It becomes clear. The FBI leave at least 74 dead, including 25 children. Note what I said there, 25 children were killed in this raid, and by horrible death: arsenic gas, fire, falling roofs, and death by gunshot. Look at the clip, the film, Waco, the rules of engagement, look it up. And so, in the rules of engagement we had infrared footage which made things pretty clear that someone who acts against the government really does not have right of way. Even in the investigation report, when something is seen to be wrong, acting above the law, they do not face penalties or imprisonment. Though young people, young children died. So the effect was to bend the bones backwards, a very cruel death by cyanide gas. Timothy McVeigh. Strange situation. I'll just comment again here about this because Timothy McVeigh was at the Waco siege and saw what happened. And here he's said to be involved in what happened down in downtown Oklahoma City. And there seems to be some suspicious circumstances that went on here. I believe the truth to a lot of these things will never really be revealed until the final judgment. Revelation 13 verse 17. And that no man might buy or sell save that he have the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. The counsel is given. An expensive dwelling, a luxury, do not make a home. Cultivation of soil to grow our own food has always been part of God's plan for us. We should now begin to heed the instruction given over and over again. Get out of the cities into rural districts, where the houses are not crowded closely together and where you will be free from the interference of enemies. The Lord has shown me that some of his children would fear when they see the price of food rising, and they would buy food and lay it by for the time of trouble. Then in the time of need I saw them go to their food and look at it, and it had bred worms and was full of living creatures and not fit for use. We have a total control situation happening. Monsanto is part of that war effort. It always has been since Vietnam War days, and there will be control over even the things that we eat. We'll not be able to buy or sell except we have the mark of the beast. Guatemala, what we spoke of in Guatemala, and what has happened to that country today. Privatization to try and keep up to debts is the same thing that is happening in the Western world. Latin America is an illustration for what will happen worldwide in what we understand as liberation theology. Liberation theology is about power to the church. It's a Roman idea. Prices in the future will increase by as much as 45%, says these academics, co-leaders of the food security at the University of Queensland's Global Change Institute. The reasons were complex and global in reach, they said, and would place extra pressure on those many Australians who would already not afford a steady supply of fresh fruit and vegetables. Well, in this country, we see that big corporations and foreigners are buying up the land. We see that we have the illustration of other countries, what happened. At the moment, we have riots going on in places like Bosnia, 40% unemployment. Down in Mexico, there was 40% unemployment, and there was inflation at 80%, with privatization, neoliberalism behind these things. And so we have what is happening now to the West. The war continues. Its onslaught now on the Western countries that have been once free and independent, but have misused that freedom and independence and have caused suffering to other countries around the world. Now the table is being turned. The United Fruit Company, remember here, was a US corporation that traded in tropical fruit. We're talking about Guatemala here, grown on the third world plantations and sold in the United States and Europe. The company was formed in 1899. It flourished in the early and mid 20th century and came to control vast territories and transportation networks in Central America, the Caribbean coast, Colombia, Ecuador and West Indies. And if anyone upset that situation, then war would break out, with another reason for that war upon that country. Though it competed with Standard Fruit Company for dominance in the international banana trade, it maintained a virtual monopoly in certain regions, some of which came to be called Banana Republic. Now, the word Banana Republic is an interesting one, as Prime Minister Paul Keating years ago mentioned that if the country of Australia would not reduce its labour costs and increase its manufacturing, now that's hard to do in the global situation, increase your manufacturing when we have sweatshops and things like this, and the government not acting on behalf of the people to encourage them to buy within their own circle and community, the result would be a banana republic. So this is what is happening. In a banana republic, we have the very rich who own property, and those who try to scramble up there might become lawyers or such. So we have the very rich and we have the very poor. The Protestant work ethic is taken away. So we have, on a wider international scale, the World Bank initiates China, works on giving it the technology and the funds, Italian technology and growing. What happens there is that in the storage of food, nitrogen is taken out of the room, oxygen free and nitrogen placed in the room, and they can store the food up to 2 years. Italian technology given to the Chinese, and they have the cheap labour by which to work, and we can give this produce to once independent countries. Remember, your steps can only be perfected in Jesus Christ. Spiritual and physical healing, attaining unto perfection. This is what Perfect Steps is all about.